Hello everybody, Abed's brother here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the performance of some old PCs in Starfield. Starfield was developed by Bethesda Game Studios, published by Bethesda Softworks. It was released on PC on September 6, 2023, uses the Creation 2 engine and the DirectX 12 API. And you can see the minimum and recommended specs on screen here. It's a very demanding game. We're probably going to be under minimum spec for this one. For our first test system, we're going to be using the AMD FX-8320e and R9 290. And unfortunately, I do not have good news for you. The graphics card does not meet the minimal specifications requirements. I honestly wasn't expecting too much from the R9 290. I knew it would have trouble based on how it performs on Windows, but I did not expect it to flat out not start. That's just unfortunate, but that's the way it is. On to the next system. For test system 2, we'll be using the i7-4790 and the NVIDIA GTX 1060 6GB. We are still under the minimum recommended here, but the game does load. So we will be at 1080p, but we will be at 50% render resolution. So this will actually be 540p. And it's custom settings. It's the 1080p very low settings, but with medium lighting. Because the lighting in Starfield is what makes the low settings look absolutely horrible. Anything below medium on the lighting and the game really starts to look like trash. Early reviews said, oh, it's, FSR looks terrible at low settings in Starfield. Well, it's because they had the lighting set low. I can't play the game with the lighting below medium. I'll take this over turning the lighting down and getting better FPS, because the game really does look that bad with the lighting lower. And here you can see we're in the middle of New Atlantis, running around the Mass District. We started out about 22 FPS. We're at 24, dipped to 17 there as we pan. This genuinely is the worst area for this combination. This is really not a... This is not an optimal experience at all. This actually reminds me of when I tried to play Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag on a Terascale APU. It was very similar to this. If you have this set up and you really want to play Starfield, obviously it works, but I do not recommend this at all. But that's no reason to cut the test short. We're going to do the full loop that I went with here. You can see we are using Proton Experimental. I did not do that. In the Proton Steam compatibility settings, I have it set by default to use Proton 10.0-4, but when I launched the game, it just went automatically to Proton Experimental, so I guess it's something in the Steam, I don't know, Steam compat files. It tells it to use experimental automatically. But that is what we are using here. And now that we're out of the Mass District, you can see we're up near 30 FPS. Better, but still not great here, especially when you consider that we're running this at 540p. Which technically is FSR performance. There is FSR Ultra Performance, I think, is 33%, but the slider in the menu, the resolution slider, doesn't go below 50%. So this is, without manually dropping the resolution, this is the lowest resolution we can do. And if you can use FSR upscaling, like, it's better to adjust the resolution with the resolution slider rather than manually lowering it, because then you get FSR's upscaling to make things look semi-passable. The game definitely looks blurry a little bit. I mean, running at half resolution like this. But it actually looks better than I thought it would. That's not saying much when your frames per second is between 25 and 30. It's almost playable, almost. But no, that early section where we were dipping, this is a pre-rendered in-engine, but automatic cutscene, so dropping to 22 FPS here doesn't look great, but it doesn't really affect playability. That early part in Mast, starting at the top of the steps there, that was not very good frame rate.
Hell of a view from here.
So now we're in space. And I debated how much time I was going to spend here in space. I'm just going to show you the third-person view here. There's not really a lot going on. That we're around 30 FPS most of the time means these space sections should be pretty playable. We actually get better FPS in the cabin, which not surprising really, I guess. And then we're going to go to Mars, and just because that's fairly easy, we're just going to do a direct. I wanted to get this gravity jump here recorded. Let's not gravity jump into the planet. And I'm expecting, yeah, frame drop to 12 there. That's why I wanted to run this, run that section. Unfortunately, you're going to also see Starfield's greatest failing firsthand in this test. Count how many load screens we get. That one was actually pretty quick. One of the problems you get with playing Starfield on a system below minimum spec on the CPU is that even though it is installed on a solid-state drive, it still takes time to stream in all the assets. And yes, they need to be rendered, that's the GPU's job, but the actual lining everything up and loading it in, that's on the CPU. And you can see the i7-4790 hit 88% a few seconds ago. There's 85. The 4790, they're 91. 4790 is working very hard here. And that was actually reasonably quick in terms of loading. Yeah, you can definitely tell I'm running this at half res. And this is just a corridor, so you would expect the performance to be decent here. Now, Cydonia on Mars is another city, and cityscape, settlementscape, and it does open up to a fairly large area that you're going to see in a second. But it is just not as demanding as New Atlantis. That's why every time I test this game, you have to show a bit of New Atlantis.
If you're going to use the elevators or stairs to reach the other
But now here's the conundrum with this setup in Starfield. If New Atlantis is the only place where the frame rate really goes down like that, into the mid to low 20s, and everywhere else the game runs like this, which is upper 20s, low 30s, I could actually handle this. I know their PC aesthets will be like, no, less than 60 FPS is not playable. It's like, well, 30 FPS is playable to me. The main thing for me would be the lower resolution visuals. And barely passable. But now for test system 3, we're going to be going to the i7-5930K and the Vega 64. And let's hope the Vega does not disappoint this time. So this will be at 1080p with 100% resolution scale, so no upscaling, at the same settings. So it's very low, but with medium lighting. So no upscaling at all. This is a 1080p with 100% resolution. And it looks like we're a little CPU bottlenecked. Just a little bit. Yeah, you can see compared to the previous video, you can see that everything looks much sharper and clearer, and that is simply the result of not using any upscaling and playing at the native res. Let's get a look here. Oh, that dipped a bit. Yeah, that was the CPU loading the assets in. So this is the drawback of using a super old CPU like Broadwell. 5930K is fairly highly clocked for a Broadwell chip. But it is just a little bit taxed here, trying to load in new assets. The Vega keeps up most of the time, but there is a little bit of CPU bottlenecking. Now, one thing that would be true, but I didn't test because I know how much people, gamers, hate frame generation, but when you're getting more than 40 FPS in a game, and that game has FSR frame generation, you can kick on frame gen and hit 60 FPS. I know they say it's supposed to be 2x frame gen, but it's not really. It doesn't really give you double the frame rate. It gives you about 60 to 70% more frames. It does not give you plus 100% frames. But here we're in the low 40s most of the time. So if you were looking for a visually smooth experience, you definitely could use frame gen. And VRAM usage isn't bad at all, but you can tell from how cool the card is staying. This is a blower card. The MSI AirBoost OC doesn't have a big cooler on it, it has a blower cooler on it. You can tell from how cool the card is staying that it is not really being used to its full potential here, and that is down to Broadwell, the CPU. The 5930K is working very hard here to try to give us the best experience possible. I'm expecting good things in space.
Let's get this crate in space.
Inside the ship and everything. Let's see. And we're staying about the same inside the ship. Yeah. Well, let's go to Mars.
All is well, Captain.
This is actually my own ship that I designed. I honestly don't remember all the parts that I put on it. But I remember I wanted a lot of speed in space. That's why it's got this huge stack of engines in the back.
Engines firing.
Remember, I had to save up to get the reactor to power all of them. So, Vega 64 so far looking like low to mid 40s.
Hell of a view from here.
Kick on frame gen, you'll be over 60, but we're trying to not offend the purists, so no frame gen footage. And third person view, we're in the mid 40s. In the cabin in the ship, we're in the low 50s. So, and in the star map, you can tell there's not a lot going on here. We're in the hundreds. We're well over 100 here. So let's go to Mars again. Let's see what kind of drop we get with that. Now that we've loaded into a new area, you can see VRAM has gone up a little bit. Not much. Ah, yeah, it dipped. And you can see from the I/O read-write on the overlay there, we're not actually reading a ton of material from the hard drive. And that load was pretty quick, so not really a lot going on there. We'll see what we get on Mars. This is not the only video with the Vega 64. In a minute I'm going to test it in 1440p, so then we'll see. We'll get to see the Vega 64 pushed a little harder than it is here. I was trying to figure out how to trigger the landing scene, the landing animation. I couldn't figure it out. It just teleports me there because I've already been there.
I picked up something you might be interested in.
Oh, and we have a dust storm. Even in a dust storm, we're still in the 40s to 50s. You can see it does push regularly pushing a single CPU thread to 100% or near 100%. Not sure what that's all about. I don't recall that behavior on Windows, which would mean it's something induced by VKD3D. But now here the frame rate's pretty good. So New Atlantis definitely absurdly demanding, I guess, with the number of items and objects that are on screen at any one time.
Look at this place.
But if this was, this is very playable. Vega 64 continues to show its prowess, its longevity.
It's depressing.
Definitely definitely one of the best bargains available on the GPU market today. And here, panning around, high 40s, low 50s, very good. But now let's take Vega 64 to 1440p. So the way I manage this is it's 4K, but it's 67% resolution scale, which is 1440p. Same settings, very low, with medium lighting, and no upscaling. So you could say, oh, it's 4K at FSR quality, or it's just at 1440p. It's 1440p, that's what it is. And here you can see we are at mid to low 30s in New Atlantis. And now the GPU is fully used. This is arguably more impressive than the 1080p result. Now you're really pushing the GPU, and you see just how much Vega has to offer. Now, if you were playing this on a 1440p monitor, you could kick on FSR quality on 1440p would be, I think, 1080p. And then you would be getting the results we saw in the first video. But 1440p would give you about this. And this is playable to me. We're above 30 FPS almost the entire time. Especially with a game like Starfield. Now, if this were Doom, I would say, no, this is not playable. Doom, you need that fluid 60 FPS frame rate. Starfield does not. Starfield, you're going to spend a lot of time in conversation, walking around, talking to people. Yes, there's combat, and the combat is actually feels fairly decent. It's a little bit clunky to me, but it feels fairly decent, but that's not how you're going to be spending the bulk of your time in Starfield. So 30 FPS response times, for me, are just fine. And you can see we're still over 30. That to me is just incredible in the GPU this old. In an operating system it wasn't really designed for at a very high resolution. Now if you kicked on frame gen here, you'd probably get about 50 FPS. You're not going to get you're not going to be able to hit 60 with frame gen. You would have to actually reduce the resolution even further. Excuse me. But I'm expecting better results in the ship and in space and on Mars, because New Atlantis really is a super demanding environment.
Well, if it isn't my favorite walking picture.
Vega continues. I was looking around at Vegas the other day. At the time I'm making this video, this is in February 2026. You can get a... Vegas have gone up a little bit in price lately. Get a Vega 56 for about 80 bucks right now, US. And that'll be about 10 to 15 less percent performance than Vega 64. I know people say you can overclock Vega 56 and make it close to the Vega 64. It's like, well, yes, you can, but then you run into problems. You have to keep the HBM cool. And you can see here that's no problem. The HBM is staying about 74 degrees, 75. You have to keep the HBM under 85 or you're going to run into problems. And of course, when you overclock, you're going to be increasing temperatures. And that can lead to significant degradation of the HBM. So you need to be very careful doing any kind of memory overclock. And in space, in the galaxy map, up near 60 FPS. Let's see what the gravity jump does. So right now we're hanging out around low to mid 40s. Okay, let's see what happens. Dip to 23, 27, then back up to the 30s. It's fine.
Grav jump complete.
This is United Colony space. Maintain current course.
Very good.
While we scan for contraband.
You know, and I wouldn't be going on gushing so much about Vega if, you know, I would say RX 6600, 6600 XT, being a newer architecture, would probably be a better option than a Vega 64, but it's more than double the cost on the used market. Right now, Vega is just an incredible value. I'm sure that will change in future, but right now, that's the way it is. So here on Cydonia, outside, no dust storm, but we're mid to upper 30s. Let's see what we get when we head inside.
Building Cydonia completely underground was a clever way of keeping the city shielded from the harsh Martian landscape.
And the 5930K not really bottlenecking us as much because of the higher resolution. That's why the Vega is staying pretty much fully occupied. Better CPU will get you a little bit better frames, maybe, but not much. Not at this resolution with this GPU. This is playable to me. We're staying above 30 FPS in the most demanding areas, and
Look at this place.
less demanding areas like
can't
Cydonia,
imagine
we're in the
being cramped
40s,
down here,
low
shaking
40s,
my
upper 30s, low 40s.
No trees, no grass. It's depressing.
And at these settings, which is very low, even at very low settings but with medium lighting, the game still looks fine. I'd probably wish for a little more population, but no, this is fantastic performance from a very old graphics card at this point. Good one for Vega. Now for test system 4, we're looking at the Ryzen 5 5500 and the Intel Arc A770. And I'm going to tell you right now, this one was a big disappointment. In fact, I'm going to show you my whole process here. So I'm just running a simple launch game mode run Mango HUD, and I'm running Proton GE. I went through the trouble of installing Proton GE just to try to get this game to work. And it launches into the menu. You're like, oh, here it is. We're running Proton GE 10-31, which was the newest one at the website at the time of this test on GitHub. And you're like, okay, looks good. Looks good so far. Let's go to settings. What settings am I using? It's going to be 1080p, 100% resolution, so like the first Vega video, we're going to be at very low with medium lighting, just like in the other videos. Okay, so let's go load my save, and I have a specific save. It's the Jemison New Atlantis. Let's click load, and it crashes. And checking the terminal log here, there is something here with skipping destruction fork without exec. I looked that up. That seems to be related to the Steam overlay, but I have the Steam overlay disabled. Then looking at other errors that show up, ignoring the Mango HUD errors. We've got something here with a serialization path. Something with a pipeline, but no, the Mesa warning. Something with a buffer fill state. Something, number of elements is too big. I think that's the problem, but I don't know what any of that means. If we go to Starfield on Proton DB, and it says gold, but let's filter to Intel GPUs. And it's borked. The main one that I want to look at here, let's make that a little bigger. Let's make that a lot bigger. So people have problems. This particular review here seems very relevant. This guy seems to know what he's talking about. He's saying there's a problem with the D3-D12 interface, and you go down to his conclusion. Game likely requires newer D3-D12 agility SDK features not yet supported in Proton. So I will keep Starfield installed on the Arc system for a while until hopefully they update Intel Arc, but maybe I'll try it again in future with a new update. We'll see, but right now it does not work. So that was probably a disappointing video. I had hoped, I knew the FX chip would work with Starfield because I actually have a video on my channel where I paired it with an RX 480 and it did play Starfield. Not very well, probably because the CPU was bottlenecking the RX 480. But that was still disappointing that it would not run with the R9 290. The GTX 1060 and 4790, that really wasn't playable to me. I mean, if all I had was a 4790 and GTX 1060, I could play it, but it would definitely be a subpar experience, at least in New Atlantis. The Vega is still the best, is still standing tall here among all the GPUs I've tested and all the games I've tested. The Vega 64 is the only GPU that has worked with every game I've tested so far, whether you're talking Oblivion Remastered, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Starfield. It does not always perform as well as Intel Arc, but in the case of Starfield, Arc doesn't perform at all. So, big victory for Vega here. That's all I got for you today. Hope this video was useful to you. If it was, please give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.